The night was thick with darkness as I drove along the desolate highway. The only vehicle for miles, the hum of the engine and the faint glow of the dashboard lights were the only companions in this midnight journey. The monotonous rhythm of the road seemed to lull me into a trance, my eyes heavy with fatigue. But suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement, a shadow that materialized and disappeared with alarming speed. My heart skipped a beat, and I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my senses on high alert. I peered into the inky blackness outside my windshield, searching for any sign of what I had just seen. My thoughts argued between paranoia and rationality, dismissing the occurrence as a figment of my imagination. But as I continued down the empty road, my unease grew, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. The feeling of being watched became almost palpable. My eyes darted nervously from side to side, scanning the darkness beyond the beam of my headlights. But there was nothing, just vast, empty fields, stretching into the horizon. The road ahead seemed to stretch on infinitely, twisting and turning like a snake in the night. And then, amidst the silence, I heard it, a faint tapping sound, like raindrops on the roof of my car. But it wasn't raining. Confusion mingled with fear as the tapping grew louder, reverberating through the interior of the vehicle. I glanced at the rearview mirror and froze. A pair of bony hands pressed against the back window. Fingers splayed wide. My scream caught in my throat as my gaze met the hollow eyes of a figure in the back seat. Its face was gaunt, pale, and twisted by an eternal despair. It stared at me, its mouth opening wide in a silent scream. With a surge of adrenaline, I slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt. The figure disappeared, leaving nothing but an echo of its presence behind. Was it real, or just a figment of my imagination? My mind raced with questions, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't alone on this desolate road. Fear and desperation propelled me forward. I pressed the accelerator, determined to escape this nightmare. But as I sped down the highway, the tapping returned, louder and more insistent than before. The sound seeped into my bones, filling me with an overwhelming sense of dread. I glanced at the passenger seat, and there it was, the figure from the back seat now vacant, its face contorted with sorrow, its eyes pleading for release. My breath hitched in my chest as I realized I was no longer driving alone. Something sinister had hitched a ride within the confines of my vehicle. I tried to slow down, desperate to shake off this malevolent presence, but the car accelerated on its own, seemingly possessed by an unseen force. The steering wheel jerked under my grip, resisting my attempts to regain control. Panic seized me as the car hurtled faster and faster down the empty highway. In a desperate act of self-preservation, I flung open the car door, hoping to escape this nightmare. But as I did, a powerful gust of wind engulfed me, smashing the door shut and trapping me inside. I was at the mercy of whatever malevolent spirit haunted this forsaken road. With each passing mile, the road seemed to transform, becoming more twisted and treacherous. The asphalt cracked and crumbled beneath the weight of the car, threatening to swallow it whole. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, sinister forms lurking just out of sight. Tears streamed down my face as I pleaded for mercy, but there was no reprieve. The car careened off the road, hurtling towards an abyss of darkness. In those final moments, I braced myself for the inevitable collision. A collision that would surely end my life, but instead of impact, there was a sudden silence. I sat motionless in the driver's seat, bewildered and disoriented. I looked around, expecting to see wreckage and chaos. But instead, I found myself parked by the side of the road, unharmed, I stepped out of the car, shaken to my core. The night was quiet and still, the darkness no longer suffocating. The car sat unscathed. The spirit that tormented me vanished without a trace. Had it all been a hallucination or a macabre test of my sanity? As I took a deep breath, relief washed over me in waves. With trembling hands, I shut the door and continued my journey, knowing that whatever had haunted me on this night would forever be etched in the dark recesses of my mind. The road stretched out, its twists and turns beckoning me forward. But this time, I approached it with caution, forever changed by the horrors that lurked in the shadows. I adjusted the rearview mirror, glancing at my weary reflection. It was past midnight, and I found myself surrounded by darkness. The hum of the car engine was the only sound punctuating the empty highway. I was driving alone, left with monotony of endless pavement stretching out before me. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my attention in the distance. Headlights appeared out of nowhere, pulsing like demonic eyes. Panic surged through me. Why would someone be on this desolate road at this late hour? As the car approached, I noticed its condition. It was battered and rusty, as if it had been through countless accidents. The driver's side window was shattered, shards of glass glinting in the passing streetlights. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I watched the car pass by, but it didn't continue driving. Instead, it came to a dead stop right in front of me. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to burst free. Curiosity mingled with fear, compelling me to investigate. I honked my horn, hoping to grab the attention of the driver. There was no response. A gust of wind brushed against my face, filled with the scent of oil and decay. With a shaky breath, I stepped out of my car and approached the mysterious vehicle. The closer I got, the more ominous it became. The paint was peeled, revealing rusted metal beneath. Dark stains marred the windows, blocking any view inside. Summoning my courage, I reached out and pulled on the door handle. It creaked open, revealing a chilling interior. It was filled with tattered upholstery, littered with trash and random belongings. The stench of decay was overpowering. Feeling as if I was being watched, I stepped back and looked around. Nothing but darkness surrounded us, devoid of any sign of human life. An icy chill crawled up my spine, and a sense of unease settled over me. I forced myself to enter the car. The interior felt suffocating, as if it held the spirits of those who had met their demise in these twisted metal walls. Flickering overhead lights cast eerie shadows, dancing across the worn dashboard. In the rearview mirror, I noticed a movement behind me. I turned around, expecting to see the back seat empty. But instead, there were figures. Silhouettes of distorted faces and twisted bodies stared back at me, their eyes devoid of life. Stifling a scream, I stumbled out of the car. The shock paralyzed me, and I stood there, trembling and haunted by the vision I had witnessed. Panic surged through my veins, urging me to escape this nightmare. But as I turned, I saw headlights in the distance. Approaching at breakneck speed, I darted back to my car, but before I could drive away, the approaching vehicle slammed into me, engulfing me in a whirlwind of metal and glass. Darkness swallowed my consciousness. When I regained awareness, I found myself lying amidst the wreckage, aching and disoriented. I spotted the other car, the one that had caused the accident, abandoned and silent as before. This time, I knew what awaited me inside. With trepidation, I made my way towards it. The same chilling atmosphere filled the air. The door creaked open, revealing the same haunting interior. But this time, as I scanned the back seat, the figures were missing. A bone-chilling truth dawned on me. The spirits had left their prison and were now free to roam the world, seeking solace in another unsuspecting driver. I had become a part of their unholy cycle. As I stumbled away from the wreckage, I realized that I had been cursed, forever haunted by the car horrors that lurked on this lonely road. The souls trapped within those twisted vehicles would forever remain etched in my memory, a constant reminder of the evil that resides on abandoned highways. To this day, I warn others to avoid the desolate stretch of road where I had my encounter. But deep down, I know that some curious souls will venture there, unaware of the darkness that awaits them, and they too will become another piece of the roadside carnage. It was a dark and stormy night as I drove down a desolate road, the rain pelting against the windshield, the wipers strained to keep up, the rhythmic swishing adding an eerie backdrop to my journey. Alone in the car, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes were following my every move. The radio crackled, the signal fading in and out. Static filled the air, interspersed with snippets of unsettling music and whispered voices. I adjusted the dial in frustration, hoping for a connection to the outside world. But all I got was an eerie silence that seemed to amplify my growing unease. As I continued driving, I noticed a figure in the distance, a hitchhiker standing at the side of the road, drenched in rain. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window. The hitchhiker's face was obscured by shadows, but their outstretched hand beckoned me forward. I hesitated, the cautionary tales of picking up strangers playing through my mind, but the relentless rain and the apparent vulnerability of the hitchhiker spurred me on. I unlocked the doors and motioned for the mysterious figure to get in. They slid into the passenger seat, and a chilling silence settled between us. The hitchhiker's features remained hidden, their dark clothing blending into the night. Unease coiled in the pit of my stomach as I realized that I had made a grave mistake. The hitchhiker muttered a few words, their voice a low rasp that sent shivers down my spine. They spoke of a shortcut, a hidden path that could lead me to my destination faster. My instincts screamed at me to refuse, but the lure of escaping the storm and reaching safety urged my compliance. As I followed the hitchhiker's directions, the road twisted and turned through a dense forest. The trees stood like spectral guardians, closing in on us. The headlights illuminated their gnarled branches, conjuring eerie shadows that seemed to dance with malevolent glee. Time lost its meaning as we navigated the labyrinthine road, the path growing narrower and more treacherous with each kilometer. Panic gripped my heart, and I realized that there was no turning back. The path ahead seemed to stretch onward indefinitely, leading us into the heart of the unknown. Just when I thought we had reached the end of the road, the car sputtered and died. Panic consumed me as I tried to start the engine, but it was no use. The hitchhiker remained eerily composed, seemingly unaffected by our stranded predicament. With no choice but to continue on foot, we trudged into the darkness, the rain soaking through our clothes. The shadows whispered, taunting us as we stumbled along the seemingly endless road. Each step felt heavier, burdened by an invisible weight that pressed down upon us. Exhaustion gnawed at my bones, and despair threatened to overwhelm me. Yet, I pressed on, driven by a desperate desire to escape this nightmare. The hitchhiker remained inexplicably silent, an enigma in the gloom. Suddenly, a glimmer of light emerged in the distance, breaking through the darkness like a beacon of hope. As we approached, I realized it was a gas station, a solitary oasis amidst the relentless night. With newfound energy, I rushed toward the building, hoping to find help or a way to get back on the road. But as I stepped inside, my heart sank, for the gas station appeared frozen in time, covered in dust and long abandoned. In the flickering fluorescent lights, I noticed a bulletin board covered in faded newspaper articles, each recounting stories of missing persons and car accidents. Faces stared back at me, their expressions frozen in eternal fear, as if trapped within the confines of this dilapidated gas station. The hitchhikers stood behind me, their presence a constant reminder of my own foolishness. They extended a withered hand, beckoning me back towards the road, towards further despair. Their eyes gleamed with an otherworldly fervor, as if they fed off the torment of lost souls. I ran, ignoring the hitchhikers' calls, desperate to escape this nightmarish purgatory. The road stretched out before me, winding into infinity. I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me, the whispers of the shadows growing louder with each passing step. Days turned into nights, and nights into days as I wandered through the eternal darkness. I became a mere specter on that road, forever trapped in the cycle of car horrors that had claimed me. I had become a cautionary tale, a victim of my own naivety. And now, as I watch from the shadows, I warn others to avoid the road that stole my freedom. For if they dare to venture down that treacherous path, they too will be consumed by its sinister embrace. The road to nowhere awaits, its jaws open wide, hungry for unwary travelers.